Kevin Perrott, that will talk to us about the Mprize, Fame and Fortune for the Oldest Mouse.
Good Lord, I'll never hear the end of that one. Well, I just want to pick my little presentation here. Hopefully it's all up there. About 2003, I met Aubrey de Grey in Cambridge University at one of our aging conference, and I said, this is amazing. He announced the Methuselah Mouse Prize, and I didn't come away from that meeting thinking that there was a magic cure for aging, but I came away from that meeting knowing that the work was happening and that things were happening. And when he said that there was an unabashed attempt to spit in the face of aging and say, we're going to actually try and do something about it, that just appeared to me naturally something like, hey, that's what I want to do too. So I asked him if I could help, and he said, sure, and the rest is history. And I'm not going to take too long here because I'm going to cut my talk really short because the crew down here actually have to be gone by very close to 6 because he has another engagement to be at by 6:30 or 7, and it's a little bit of a drive. So I'm not going to talk very much, except I'm going to just talk that aging is not an impossible problem. I think we have the technologies now to do something about it. What is really the problem is that we need to overcome the existing inertia, that there is nothing that we can do about it. And we can only do that by accelerating the awareness of the developing technologies that the people here are all working on, and that we can see a lot of proof of principle that they can be developed in the future and possibly even in the near future. I've heard talk of years, not decades, from some people who are working in some fields. So one of the problems is that there's very little funding for actually aging research, the biology of aging itself. Basically, in the history of research, no funding means you don't ask for the grant, means there are no discoveries, and then you don't increase the awareness of the potential, and that's been the problem. So no funding equals no incentive. That's pretty easy. How do you make an incentive for scientists to ask for money for which there's, to do research for which there is no funding? Well, you tell them that it's a competitive prize, and competitive prizes are useful for difficult but worthwhile problems, and because they offer them fame and fortune. Fame and fortune, that's what anybody needs, and sometimes food, but sometimes progress, right? So I'm just going to skip through this, and basically there's a whole bunch of competitive prizes in the past, Longitude Prize, a whole bunch of prizes. The most recent being the XPrize, which you probably all heard of, which was a $10 million prize for developing a reusable spacecraft within 2 weeks, and it was a Microsoft thing, and everybody was happening. And then I would need sound for this, so it's not going to happen. So $10 million, there was 26 teams. Eventually, somebody won the prize. And they actually spurred a commercial space development with Richard Branson called Virgin Galactica. So it's a multi-billion-dollar. They're selling tickets for $200,000. I'm sure everybody's going to line up for them. But this is a real thing that's going to be happening with 3 or 4 years. So this is really, the Mprize is really an XPrize for aging. And the Mprize was born in 2003, as I said, with the goal being to create the world's oldest mouse, and so that the scientists can create cash and a lot of fame. We currently have $4.3 million in cash and commitments, and we have 8 competitors all vying for this prize. Harvard, MIT, and others. There's even a Canadian. The first winner was Andrei Bartke. He created a mouse with a genetic manipulation that was able to live up to, I think it was 1 week less than 5 years old. And there's the little mutant. He was a small one. Nobody wants to be small, and nobody can go back in time to change their genetics, so nobody's really interested in that. We only have 155,000 of our 4.3 million in that prize. So actually what everybody's really interested in is rejuvenation, because we are all older. And we currently have 1.5 million in cash. The bar was set by Stephen Spindler, who had a group of mice that, through caloric restriction no less, lived about 20% longer than a regular mouse, or about 1,356 days. So this is a little picture of his healthy, calorically restricted mice, which I'm not going to show you. But basically, I'm just going to tell you about a group of individuals called the a group of individuals called the 300, which make up the bulk of the $4.3 million that we have. And I'm going to read you something that I wrote that I think it was actually, the 300 is a new movie, and I'm sure everybody's really become familiar with it, and I just saw it the other day. And I tell you, it brought tears to my eyes because I really feel like we are that kind of in that position. We are all fighting for our lives, generally. We may not know it, but we are. And I came to that conclusion. I wrote this thing about the 300, and it's on the website. There are about 129 or 130 members now, so we're not quite at 300, but we have 130 people who want to donate $1,000 a year for 25 years. And the declaration that I wrote was, or that we all agreed on, was we members of the 300 hold these beliefs. The world is made poor by the aging process. The control of aging is desirable, and the control of aging is foreseeable. We are the 300. We are those who recognize the horrible loss inflicted by the aging process, and when the opportunity to do something about it presented itself, did not stand by. And that is what this conference is about, is to try to raise the awareness that the opportunity to do something about it is presenting itself to this generation. And even if it doesn't happen for this generation, we may be able to hand the next generation a better world and a longer life. And thank you. Let's all go for coffee, and let's be back, and we're going to really crack that whip on those next people. Thank you.